Hi. An artist friend of mine once told me, commercial art is what you do in response to the outside world. Fine art happens when you look inside. I've always been a creative person. I didn't believe I could make a living as a fine artist, so I paid the bills by writing marketing pieces, even though I knew my best work was that of a poet and an artist, so off the clock, I wrote poems and painted. I've also sensed that I'd have to overcome a health hurdle in my 50s, and if I survived, I thought I would live to be 88. Meanwhile, I went about my life. Ironically, I wrote about healthcare for clients, hospitals, physicians, you name it. In 2010, I lie in bed and felt a lump in my breast. I tried to be rational. A lump didn't mean cancer, but later, as my doctor poked around my right breast, her crumpled brow told me that all was not well. There were more furrowed brows, and the diagnosis showed invasive ductal carcinoma, or stage 1. Stage 1 sounded nice. Not as nice as stage 0, but good enough. But the cooties needed to come out. A few weeks later, I woke up in post-op and felt for my breast. Gone was the lump. I spent that summer in radiation, but the experience didn't feel as scary as I'd envisioned. I was back to life as usual and tried to figure out what having cancer was supposed to mean to me. Fast forward, 2 years later, I was very fatigued. I also had impressive black and blue marks that I dismissed as being klutzy. But it was the hour-long nosebleed that inspired me to call the doctor. 3 days later, I was diagnosed with APL leukemia, likely caused by the radiation treatment for my breast cancer. I spent 30 days in the hospital, taking in chemo, a parade of friends and family, including my husband, Scott, and friendly doses of arsenic. 30 days in the hospital, is a lot like the first few minutes after a car crash. The world goes silent. No one expects anything of you. Your thoughts are clear. I wrote every day, and I started a blog. I was writing from the inside out. Since I tackled trouble with humor, sharing the story made me feel better and chuckle. I became more enamored with going pro as an artist and a poet. When my husband finally drove me home from the hospital, I rolled down the car window and felt the cool March air blow on my face. It was the first time I'd smelled fresh air in a month. I knew that I'd learned what I was supposed to learn when I had breast cancer, that there were more than a few artistic projects on my bucket list, and it was time to empty the bucket. I realized that dreams not followed are tripped over. It was time for my second act. The first project was my own website. It's done. The second project is a book of poems and paintings. I'd had the manuscript for over a decade, but needed a title and a publisher. One day when I was in the shower, where so many good ideas happen, the title "Lending Color to the Otherwise Absurd" popped into my head. I didn't know why it stuck, but it did. I moved forward with the manuscript. 4 months ago, with a grant from the city of Chicago, I launched the book, Lending Color to the Otherwise Absurd. It was months before I understood that my cancer experience inspired that title. I always knew life was unfair. Some people are struck by lightning, while others win the lottery. And like other aspects of life, cancer is unfair and absurd. It strikes many who did everything right and affects their family and friends with huge, unexpected challenges. I try to make changes that help me manage life's absurdities, but I know some things I can't change. Therefore, the art of living is to interpret or color the pervasive absurdities with a beauty, an irony, and a compassion that makes the nonsense less disagreeable and even amusing. Doing so invites me to engage more fully and report, create, and act with greater mindfulness and compassion and joy. My writing and painting are examples of this belief. Through humor and art, I redefine my world and want to share that message with others to help them recreate their own. Some might consider this positive thinking. I consider this positive doing. In the past year, I've had 2 art shows and published my book and have had 3 featured readings. I'm becoming the person I've always wanted to be. Last year, I also turned 60. So I no longer am in my 50s, and I'm looking forward to more cootie-free years filled with artful humor and beauty, and sharing it with others who are open to coloring their own absurdities with a new perspective and inspiring their second acts. Thank you.